call this virtual meeting of Heritage Oakville to order. Lovely to see you all and such a nice variety of backgrounds. Dave, I'll keep a watch out for traffic just to make sure that you're not in any danger where you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I'd like to thank you all for being here and for all of the staff who put together this meeting for us. It is a virtual meeting again, and it's being publicly broadcast, and members of the public can join the meeting. They can call 905-815-6095 if they wish to delegate or speak to any issue. For those of you who are just watching, you can go to oakville.ca and pick up a copy of the agenda for today's meeting so that you can follow along. Now we have some delegations today, and as usual, the staff will manage the delegations coming on and going off for the appropriate items. The Budget Committee seems to have decided that it really likes the third Tuesday of a month as well. So we may, well, we're not under too much of a time constraint. I think we have till noon, and we haven't gone till noon for a long time. So I think we should be okay, but we will keep an eye on the time, especially delegations. You should know that you have a 10-minute time limit. We are an advisory committee. We make our recommendations to the Planning and Development Council. So any decisions that we make today with respect to a recommendation, it will go to P&D on the 18th of January at 6:30. So if you lose contact, you can email townclerk@oakville.ca or call 905-815-6095 at any time during the course of the meeting. Okay, so I think that's all the sort of boilerplate. Now, as regards attendance, Madam Clerk, do you have any regrets? Madam Clerk?
No,
Jill,
Mr. Chairman, there are no regrets.
Well, they have no regrets. Good, thank you. Okay. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to any item on the agenda today? Okay, thank you. Seeing none. The next item is the confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting. These have been distributed. You've had a chance to read them. Are there any comments? Can I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Gittings. So the motion is that the minutes be adopted as circulated. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted. So the first item on the agenda this morning, item 4A, with respect to discussion, is the application with respect to 88 Park Avenue, and I think that one is Sue. Good, off you go.
It's an interesting property, 88 Park Avenue. Some of you will be familiar with it because we have actually seen quite a bit about this property just recently with the heritage permit for 86 Park Avenue, but also in the past for 474 Lakeshore Road East. So this is one part of the house that was historically known as Brockstow House. It is located just south of Lakeshore Road East on Park Avenue. You can see where that little red arrow is pointing to the small parcel there for 88 Park Avenue. And then the map on the left actually shows the various components of Brockstow House with different eras of construction indicated with different boxes. And so the red portion of the house, which is primarily 86 Park Avenue with some portions of what is now 474 Lakeshore Road East, that was the original farmhouse as far as we can tell, with then the green portions being added to the house sometime around the 1920s. And that included a one-story addition to the north side of the original house, which forms part of the subject property that we're looking at today. And then the blue bluish purple boxes indicate additions that were done later, so I believe 1990s. And so the house at 88 Park Avenue has the one-story addition that was built onto Broxtowe House in the 1920s, which was a library that was one story. And then an additional story and a half, as I say, were added on to 88 Park Avenue as a result of an OMB settlement in the late 1990s. And so showing that kind of close-up of the map, you can see that these various severances that resulted in the 3 different lots that are now the Broxtowe House wouldn't have been approved today. But it does mean that 88 Park Avenue does certainly have the smallest lot, which is partially due to the need to create a front yard for what was the rear portion of Broxtowe House, which is now 474 Lakeshore Road East, but also the recently severed portion of 474 Lakeshore Road East, which is now 480 Lakeshore Road East. So lots of addresses here. So I'll just take you around a couple of photos of the property so that you can see here, this is the front part of 88 Park Avenue. And you can see 86 Park Avenue just kind of tucked behind it. That was the original portion of Broxtowe House. This is looking straight down the driveway to what would have been the front yard of 474 Lakeshore Road East, and it is now actually 480 Lakeshore Road East. So that building that you can see at the back of the driveway is actually on a separate property and was recently constructed just in the past couple of years. And then we'll take you around to the back of the property. So this is the back side of 88 Park Avenue. And then kind of looking a little bit closer at that interesting configuration of additions. This is the north side of 88 Park Avenue, and this is the side that will actually be the most heavily impacted in the proposed heritage permit application that we're going to go over now. So this is one of the few historic photos of the house that we have that shows the library addition as the one-story portion that it was. Sorry, we don't actually have that full elevation, but you can see what the original configuration of that one-story library was from this photograph within the red rectangle. So the owners of 88 Park Avenue have applied for a heritage permit application to add a new addition mostly to the north side of the existing residence. And so here you can see the original portion of 88 Park Avenue. The front elevation primarily remains unchanged apart from a new proposed porch entrance, which does create more of a formal entrance than currently exists, which is not considered historic. The new addition has room for a garage on the ground level and then living space on the second story. The applicants are dealing with a very tight lot. It is quite small, and the building itself is also fairly small too. They took the direction of staff as best as possible to ensure that the proposed addition is lower in height than the 1990s addition, and is also slightly recessed from that front plane of the elevation. And so what you're looking at here is actually the north elevation that shows the new addition. And this is coming around to the rear of the building, where there are a few more additional changes to kind of square up some of those odd-shaped little projections and to create new entrances and doors in order to give better access to the small backyard space that they do have. So I have attached the heritage designation bylaw in the agenda package, and you'll note that only a portion of the heritage attributes apply to 88 Park Avenue. And they are rather limited because, as I said, we did certainly acknowledge in that designation bylaw that the second story addition to 88 Park Avenue is not considered historic. So what is historic is the location and general footprint of the one-story addition, the library, the rug brick, which clad chimney, the rug brick clad foundation, the exterior cladding of stucco that has the white paint with the dark brown trim details, and remaining fenestration on the building on the first story only, which includes the small pane leaded window sash and the frames. And so as we review the application, because this isn't a heritage conservation district property, this is individually designated, we try to apply the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada, which generally looks at trying to minimize the changes to original or historic fabric. And so the location of our building does not change, although the footprints will slightly be altered in order to accommodate the new addition. The chimney will remain intact, and while a portion of the foundation will need to be removed to accommodate the addition, it will be recreated to match. Same with the stucco. Obviously, in order to build onto the building, they will have to remove part of the existing stucco to accommodate that addition, but will be replaced to match. And then in order to try to conserve the historic fenestration on the first story, it is that north side window that is impacted because that's where the addition is being located. They have proposed that it be removed and then partially reused in the front elevation. So I'm just going to actually flip back to the slide here where you can see that the windows right above the garage doors are actually the window from the north elevation of the existing residence. So they're reusing 2 of the leaded glass panels here. Currently is a 3-pane, but they can't fit that much space, unfortunately, in the area that they have available. It certainly was discussed with the applicant to relocate that window to the north elevation, to this elevation. However, due to the proximity of this building to the neighboring structure, they would have had to have fire shutters placed over top of it. And so that seemed to really detract from the purpose of conservation and being able to see this historic window. And so the proposed solution is to reuse it on the front elevation instead. And so I have made a slight change to the heritage permit recommendation from what you see in your agenda package, simply just to put in that the final details on the doors, windows, siding, and colors be submitted to staff for final approval before installation, which is one of our general requirements, and I do apologize for it being left out of the agenda package. Other than that, we are recommending that the heritage permit application before you be approved, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Sue. As you say, it's an interesting house. In fact, it's an interesting conglomeration that we've just dealt with an application for the piece of it to the south as well. So people seem to be looking after the property. Okay, are there any questions of Sue? George, off you go.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Sue, really. Is this proposal basically the same proposal that we saw when we visited the site some time ago now? It looks to be the same. I just want to confirm.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I actually don't think, I don't recall us doing a site visit for this one simply due to the COVID situation. You may have, I don't know if you're thinking about 86 Park Avenue next door or not.
I think I'm thinking 86, and that's
Okay.
right.
I mean,
Sorry,
this proposal itself, the applicants have been very willing to accept the feedback of both heritage planning staff and actually our committee of adjustment planner as well, because there were variances required in order to construct this addition. I mean, the entire configuration of Brockstow House doesn't meet current zoning standards. And so there were a number of items that were considered to be legal non-conforming that had to be encapsulated into the new zoning for the site, as well as increases to the lot coverage in order to incorporate that new addition. Those variances have been approved, and they were certainly reviewed by heritage planning staff before it went to the committee of adjustment to make sure that there was a baseline of comfort with from a staff level as well. And so their variances have been approved with the notation that a heritage permit is still required for this particular project.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to ask a question of Sue? No? Good. I think Mr. Graham is the owner of the property. I don't know whether he wished to add anything to what Sue has said. Graham, I think you're still on mute. There you go.
Yes, there we are.
Yes.
Chair, and good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. And thank you, Sue, also very thorough report. And I also appreciate the research that's been done over the years and recently on the house. And we're quite often asked of the history of the house, and it's been very enjoyable to be able to have that and to share. Really, I'm here to, as a homeowner, if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Graham? No. So that's good. Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Okay, you're welcome. Take
Don't-
care.
We'll keep looking because we're not finished with it yet. Okay. These are the only delegations I think we had, the only presentation we had with respect to this. So it's now up to the committee. Is there any discussion on this item? Would somebody, Jerry, would...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Originally, I had a couple of observations on this application, but on the whole, I find it a lovely, sympathetic addition to the original. My two concerns were that the original elimination of the north elevation of the house, but now that we understand the entire second story is a recent 1990s addition, I think that's a moot point. And the second concern I had was one of the original proposals of detached garage, which we typically support in Heritage, versus the now proposed attached garage. And I understand that the detached garage concept, while considered originally, was not supported by zoning for a number of issues, in addition to the negative impact on the trees. So I'm in support of staff recommendation on this one. It's a lovely, sympathetic addition. Thank you.
Would you like to make that a motion, Jerry?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We have an amended motion, but that is to say it's not, it is the motion, the original motion, but it's not the one that was in your package because, and I'm sorry I missed that, Sue. I'm usually onto that one, that we always would like to have staff still involved, so that they're keeping an eye on things as they progress. So that, do you have that to show on the screen, Sue, just so that everybody's clear?
If they could share the screen again to the last slide of the PowerPoint presentation, that would be helpful. Yes, thank you. This is the amended recommendation is the last slide. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so you can see that little addition as 1A.
Yep.
So that is the motion. So if you can drop that again, Sue. Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion? I'll call the question then. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, the next one is item B, a notice of intention to demolish 110 Chisholm Street. It's a house that's on the register, so in fact this is the process to try and get it removed from the register. And it's Carolyn on this one, so I'll hand it over to you, Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, the property is 110 Chisholm Street. It's located on the west side of Chisholm Street, just north of Lakeshore Road. This is just west of downtown Oakville. And the property was listed in 2012. It was listed for its potential as a circa 1916 Edwardian brick house with arts and crafts style influences. And the owner recently submitted a notice of intention to demolish for the property in order to have it removed from the Heritage Register as a listed property. And council must deal with the notice by January 19th, 2021. Along with the application or the notice, they submitted two documents. The first is a heritage assessment report by Tom Murison. This provides a lot of detail on the construction of the house and the history of it in terms of its design and structure. And the second one is a heritage impact assessment by Laterno Heritage Consulting, and this provides a full assessment of the property and its heritage value and assesses the property in accordance with Ontario Regulation 906, which are the criteria we use to determine if a property is worthy of designation under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. So again, just giving some planning policy and framework background, we have the provincial policy statement, which says that significant built heritage resources and significant cultural heritage landscapes shall be conserved. The PPS works together with the growth plan to ensure, along with the Heritage Act, that there is a shared principle that cultural heritage resources shall be conserved. And again, the Ontario Heritage Act sets out the procedures for designating a property at a provincial and municipal level, and this includes the use of Ontario Regulation 906. And again, those are the criteria for determining if a property has cultural heritage value to merit designation. So just a quick sort of general overview from the heritage impact assessments. The research done by the consultants found that the house was built in 1917. They consider it to be a vernacular structure built and designed using common materials and methods. It's a 2-story brick and wood shingle cladding home, has wood windows, stone foundation, a front porch which was original but altered. And it's thought that the design was very likely copied from a pattern book at the time, which was quite common. And it was believed that the house was built by Albert Ford, but no significant information could be found about Mr. Ford or any of the later owners of the property. So in terms of the actual valuation itself, again, the house is built and designed using common materials and methods. The house is not considered to be rare or unique or to display a high degree of craftsmanship or artistic merit or a high degree of technical or scientific achievement. Secondly, in terms of its historical associations, it's not considered to be associated with any significant community member and doesn't appear to have any potential to yield information that contributes to the understanding of the community. And finally, contextually, the property was not found to be important in defining, maintaining, or supporting the character of the area, and it's not considered to be a landmark. So just showing some views of the home. This is looking north on Chisholm Street, and the house is there on the left. This is looking south on Chisholm Street towards Lakeshore, and the house is on the right. Some more photos of the front of the property going around the side, as shown from the rear and the front. And again, there are a lot more photos in the 2 assessment documents that you have in the package. So the conclusion from the 2 documents was that the property in the building at 110 Chisholm Street does not have significant cultural heritage value and does not merit designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. I think everyone agrees that there is heritage value here. It is a historic building. It does contain a lot of its original materials and features. But at the end of the day, we have to determine whether or not it's worthy of designation under Part 4 of the Heritage Act using Regulation 906. And the documents have confirmed, in their opinion, they don't believe it does. So at this point, staff is also recommending, in addition to having the property removed from the Heritage Register, we recommend that anything, materials be allowed for salvage if there's any interest, specifically materials like the stone used in the foundation. So again, this is staff's recommendation that the property be removed from the Heritage Register and that prior to demolition, the property owners allow for salvage of historic materials. And we do have the agents for the property owner and I believe the heritage consultant here as well if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. This is a difficult one. The house presents so nicely. But we are part of a legislative process here which sets out some pretty clear guidelines and all the boxes that have to be ticked. And what you're telling us and your opinion to us, your recommendation to us, and the 2 consultants are telling us that the building does not warrant a Part 4 designation.
That's correct.
That being the case, there's not much choice for us. However, I think there may well be some discussion about it. So let's get the speakers list going. Who has any questions of Carolyn? Kathy? Okay, off you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not a question that I have per se, but maybe to provide some assurance to members of the public who may want to, or who are listening to our deliberations, and that my biggest concern, and again, I will voice it, is that the West Harbor area would have been a prime candidate, in my opinion, for some sort of a district plan, given that Heritage did not stop at 16 Mile Creek. And on the other side, meaning Chisholm, Forsyth, all that area, Head, Bond, there's a lot of what I consider heritage homes, and we've dealt with ones on Wilson as well. And I guess my question is for them, if we had had a district plan, would we have been able to preserve some of these homes versus solely looking at them through the lens of a Part 4 designation?
Through you to Mr. Chair, yes. I mean, if the area was designated as a heritage conservation district, we would have identified properties that were considered contributing, being heritage properties, and non-contributing, and I would think this one would be a contributing property. Again, we can't look at it at that point just because it's not designated, but certainly if that area was designated, I think this one would probably have been one that was contributing.
Okay, I guess my concern is, as I say, I totally agree with staff's assessment, and I appreciate the applicant has provided two documents, so it's been thoroughly researched. But again, and I know we've got a lot of work, as Drew often talks about, in our job jar, but I would like to see that maybe we have something put on our to-do list for looking at this area for a heritage district, because again, I'm just concerned that sometimes it doesn't fall into one basket, but we could retain or preserve or conserve, pardon me, some of these properties and the sort of history associated with the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Good comments all around. Anyone else got any questions of Carolyn? Okay. Now, we do have a delegation, I believe, for this one. Is it Jason? I don't know, Jason, if you wish to add anything to what you've heard presented. You're still on mute, Jason.
How's that? Sorry. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time, and thank you to committee staff for their report. Not very much to add. I would lean on, I believe we have Chris on the line as well, the heritage consultant from Laterno, for any questions in respect to the property itself.
Okay, so I'll ask then, does anyone have any questions of the delegates? The reports were pretty thorough. I mean, they were pretty good. Probably answered all your questions then. Okay, thank you. So if there's nobody else delegating on this particular item, it is now back to the board. What's your discussion? What do you want to say about it? Anybody wish to speak? Daniela?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the same sentiment. I feel it doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable, making a decision to tear down a house like this. It does have that aspect of contributing, but doesn't work in a legal framework. So I guess I just wanted to express that. But I guess
I shouldn't say it, but I think it's shared. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, so if there's no further discussion, then can I have Brenda?
Sorry, Drew. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I echo both Jerry and Daniela, and I do take exception. I walked around the property, the 2 blocks around it this morning, just to be refreshed in my mind before coming to the meeting. And I do take a little exception to the statement that it doesn't contribute to defining or maintaining the character of the area. I do think it's a home that forms the buffer between Lakeshore and homes that should be considered going up Chisholm and in the neighborhood. So I don't support what we're doing here today. I also feel very uncomfortable with it, and I do think it's the loss of it's the thin edge of the wedge on this street on the west side of Chisholm. So that's just my position. Thank you.
Yes, Brenda, that always the decision for us, is it part 4 or not? And we have to go by the professional input because it's a pretty steep bar. But I think the idea of a part 5 might have been helpful. But we know from experience it can be kind of hard to get part 5 districts defined. We tried it once before, not long ago, north of the Trafalgar district, and unfortunately it didn't fly with the community. Okay, Daniela?
Sorry, just a question on that. So if we felt that this property was contributing to the neighborhood, does that change? Like if that's a sentiment among committee members, does that change the decision as to whether or not it's part 4?
I could let Carolyn take that, but I think the answer to that is no, because the definition of a contributing property is part of the Part 5 district plan. And we don't have a Part 5 district plan, so we've nothing to base that statement on. So anyway, Carolyn, do you want to?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. At this point, it's really determining whether or not it's worthy of Part 4 designation or nothing. Yep.
It's a steep cliff. Okay, I'm sure everybody's reluctant, but can I have a motion? Kathy, thank you. Yes, okay, so we have a motion to accept the staff recommendation. And if there's no further discussion, I'll put that motion to the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? I can see 1, 2, 3, but the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Kristen. So the next item on the agenda is C, which is 174, 176 Front Street. And I think we may have Terry Martino, I think I heard earlier, who may join us later, or somebody will from the architect. And I'm sure Carolyn will put this in context for it. This is a bit like what we dealt with last week on the property to the north side, that this is a review of a development application in a sense. So we're not actually approving the heritage permit, but because it is covered by the conservation area, we've got to get a site plan approval for this property. So what we're doing today is reviewing what is planned, which will be submitted for the site plan approval, and then it will come back to us for a heritage approval. And the hope is that when it comes back to us, we will have already signaled the areas that we would like to see changed, so that when it comes back, it's in a form that we would be reasonably expected to approve. The idea is not to have people bouncing back and forward between two committees. So today we're looking at it, and we're going to hear what's being planned, but it's comments, and you can see from the minutes there were lots of comments on the last time we dealt with this type of application. All of those comments go forward. Staff will make sure that they're addressed, and they will presumably form part of the heritage application submission when it actually comes to us at some later date. So, okay, Carolyn, you can just bolster that, but I'm trying to put it in context so that I myself know what it is that we're trying to do here today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's helpful. So you're right, it is a site plan application we're reviewing and providing comments on today. The property is on the south side of Front Street, just east of the park. I think most of you are quite familiar with the property. To the left, you can see that there was a little section of the bottom end of Thomas Street. That's now been closed, so that's now technically part of the park as well. So the property is designated under Part 5 of the Heritage Act as part of the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District, so we are using those guidelines. The property contains the circa 1837 James MacDonald house. That's the two-story stucco portion of the house. And the current application that you are seeing today has several components. The first is to restore the historic home, the two-story portion. Secondly, it's to demolish 3 non-historic wings that were added at later dates. Thirdly, construct 4 new wings on the property. And part of that is to add a second driveway. The process, showing in green here, this is the site plan approval process stage we're at right now. This approval is required because the property is within 50 meters of the lake. And as we go through the steps, the next one would be if the site plan approval was supported, they would have to get minor variance approval. And finally, they'd have to come back for heritage permit approval before going to get all their building permits. So just giving a bit more details on what's being proposed. In terms of the historic home, at this point, they're just looking at restoring it, so not replacing any windows or doors, but they are looking at adding new dormers on the second story at the rear of the house. The demolition of the non-historic wings, there's 3 portions. The first is the 1940s and 1965 attached garages on the east side of the house. So when you're looking at the home, these are to the left. And there are 2 stories on the rear, 2 one-story wings on the rear, both built in around 1987. The first is on the westerly side, you can see it from the park, and the second one is more towards the east, behind the original home. Then the application proposes to construct 4 new wings. So it's a 1-story single-car garage and living space on the footprint of the existing garages on the east side. The second one is a 1-story living space on the footprint of the existing westerly rear wing. So again, that's the one you can see from the park. So it would just be replacing that wing with a new one. Thirdly is a 1-story single-car garage to the west of the historic house. Now this is new. There is currently no addition in this part of the property. So this is a new section that would be added. And finally, there is a shallow 1-story glazed extension along the rear wall of the historic house. This is where there is currently a 1-story wing that's proposed to be demolished. This would just be a small section that would fill in the sort of opening that would remain after that existing 1-story wing is demolished. And again, the new garage to the west would require a new driveway. Then the owners are also proposing to reduce the existing driveway on the east because it would only be a single-car garage instead of the sort of 1.5 that you see there now. And the new driveway would also require the removal of 2 existing coniferous trees. And this garage also requires a minor variance. The setback proposed is 5.24 meters, whereas 5.7 meters is required. So a setback of 5.7 meters from the road to the front of the garage is required for the new garage, and they're just under. So I'll show you some photos here first. So again, the new garage is proposed on the right-hand side where you see there, where there's a fence, and then the existing garage on the left-hand side would be removed and replaced with a new wing, and the historic portion of the house would remain. You can see there's 2 trees there, 2 coniferous trees. Those are the 2 that are proposed to be removed, along with the little set of stairs and walkway there. And then this portion of the fence would also be removed to accommodate the new driveway. This is showing the house from the west. So on the left-hand side, you see that's the 2-story portion to remain. And on the right is the 1-story that was done in the 80s. This is to be removed and replaced with a new wing. Again, this is just looking from the back. To the right, you can see the other 1980s portion that is going to be removed completely. Again, you can see here behind the picnic table on the left-hand side, that's the portion that will be removed, and this will just be landscaping instead. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the 2 garage wings that will be replaced with a new wing. And this is just showing the property from farther away. The property does extend quite a bit to the east with landscaping, and that's all to remain. This is just showing that landscape section from the street. So you can see there's quite a bit of greenery. The picket fence extends along a stone wall along Front Street. And then just coming back around to the front of the house, those are the 2 garages that you can see. So here's a site plan showing the changes. There's a lot going on in the site plan, so you really have to take some time to look at it. But essentially what you see is the darker shaded section is the 2-story house. To the right, the lighter section there is the new 1-story wing replacing the existing garages. You can see to the south of the 2-story home, the dotted line of the 1-story 80s wing to be removed. And then you can see the lighter gray wing, again, replacing the existing wing with a new one in the same footprint. And then sort of the medium shaded gray to the left is the new garage proposed. And here are the elevation views. There are perspective drawings as well. So again, these are, like on the right, it is set back from the house, from the front of the existing house. But you can see on the left is a single car garage. The second opening there is not a garage door. It's actually just a sort of a covered walkway. So the vertical lines you see there are actually wood paneling on that wall that's recessed under that opening. So it's not actually a garage, it's just a recessed portion. And I've got the floor plans here too, if that's helpful. This is the west side as seen from the park. So you can see the new garage addition and the new rear addition on that side. This is from the rear. Again, contemporary design, obviously they're proposing. On the front portions, they're proposing stone. In the back, it's mostly glass, mostly glazing. And again, from the east, you can see the new garage replacing the existing ones and the rear additions. So these are the floor plans, which I can refer back to if anyone has any questions. But essentially, you've got in the top left corner is the 2-story home, and then you've got the 3 new wings added onto it. And this is the second story. So the only portion of the home that's the 2 stories is the existing home. All of the new additions are 1 story. And here's the roof plan. And these are perspective drawings. I'll just note these perspective drawings were done earlier in the year and don't reflect exactly what's proposed in the elevation drawings and floor plan drawings that you see. But I included them just to give you an idea of the, sort of the massing and the materials that are being proposed. So this is a view from the park. This is a view along the front again with the new garage. And here you can better see that recessed section, so it's not actually a second garage. And this is from the rear, from the lake. And again, from the southeast. And this is from the southwest. So the left side is the garage, and on the right in front of you is the main portion of the picture is the replacement of the 1980s wing. So the site plan application is to be processed by planning staff with consideration of comments from Heritage Oakville and Heritage Planning staff. So the site plan application, it has come in and it's in the process of being reviewed. So there's no decisions that have been made on that. So any comments that the committee provides today would be incorporated with Heritage Planning staff's comments on the heritage side of things. And if the site plan application is to be supported or supported with revisions, the applicants would, of course, still require minor variance and heritage permit approval at a later date, and the heritage permit application would come back to Heritage Oakville. That's when we'd be looking at, final details for materials, windows, that sort of thing. But we are looking for comments today on the footprint of the new additions, the massing. Would even welcome comments on the materials, the design, the aesthetics. I think we're just looking more at a general point of view right now. We're not getting into tiny details because we're not there yet. But any comments on those type of items would be incorporated today or taken down from staff and sent to the applicants, and also incorporated into the comments that staff provide for the site plan application. And I believe, yes, we do have one of the applicants here as well to answer questions.
Hey, super. Thanks, Karen. Right. It's now time for questions. I think Councillor Gittings. So I'll start the speakers list. Just wave your hands if you're wanting to speak at some stage.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Carolyn. For clarity, this is site plan only, as you talked about, and the details in terms of finishes will come when this comes before this committee again, correct?
Correct.
So, and the reason, for those that may be watching, the reason that it's coming to site plan is the proximity to Lake Ontario.
Correct.
And any feedback or any concerns from Conservation Halton on this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Giddings, I know there's been a lot of discussion with staff and with the applicants, and I think some changes were made from the beginning to accommodate the comments from the Conservation Authority, but they certainly were one of the first to review the process and work with the applicants. So there may be some minor, requirements or requests that they have, but I think generally speaking, the application you see today, the footprint and everything is based on the initial feedback from the Conservation Authority.
So there are no outstanding concerns at this point?
I can't say absolutely for sure because I'm not processing the site plan application, but I think, if anything, they would be minor at this point.
All right, help me understand. We've got, the report talks about the need for one minor variance, and that's for the driveway.
It's for the garage, correct? The setback of the garage. Yeah.
For the garage. I've had quite a bit of feedback on the loss of the trees. And is that for this discussion or for when it comes back discussion?
That is for this discussion. The tree removal is being reviewed as part of the site plan application process. So town staff are reviewing it along with the town's private tree bylaw, and they will be assessing it based on that bylaw. So because this process is still ongoing, no final decisions have been made on that yet. But of course, this is the time to provide comments on those if you have any.
All right, if the variance isn't granted for the garage, does that affect the tree? Like, how intertwined are they? Just trying to figure out the process in terms of what comes first.
Right. I mean, it'd be up to the applicant to decide, but obviously if they are not going to get approval for the setback of the garage, they would not be able to build the garage there as is. They'd have to either redesign it or, redesign the entire project without having a garage there. So I can't speak to whether or not they would be able to incorporate a garage further back. My understanding is that they don't want to keep pushing the garage back because it's getting closer to the lake, but possibly the applicant could answer that question in terms of whether or not they'd be able to build a garage that meets zoning, but also meets all the Conservation Authority requirements, and of course also the client's wishes as well. But essentially, if they did not get the minor variance approval for the setback, obviously they'd have to do a redesign, which would may or may not include a garage there, which would then either not require or not require the removal of the trees.
All right. Thanks, Carolyn. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see some other hands there. I'll step down for a bit. Thanks.
I had Daniela next, and anybody else? Yes, Brenda, Jerry. Okay, Daniela.
I guess I really like the stone. I just want, in terms of the commentary around materials, I think Gren did something like that up on Trafalgar on the west side where he did a stone wall, actually, which ended up looking really lovely. So I like the stone in terms of material. I don't know how other people feel about the double garage, like having a garage flanking the building on each side. I understand it's a creative, it's definitely an artistic shifting, it's bold, right? But I just think that it's such a big focus on garage and stone and potentially takes away from the heritage building, which is really what we're here for, right? In terms of how do we make sure that is respected. So, and the fact that additional garage is taking those trees out, I think, is material. It's very hard for me to actually visualize that setback of that entryway. I don't really understand it either. But my concern is is this the right thing for the street? It's a really important street. It's a really important park. Or is it a really great artistic idea? And I guess, and sometimes I feel like we can get caught between those two, the desire for a very interesting architectural and functional piece versus what's really happening on that streetscape. So that's where I said, I like the stone, I love the modern in the back, I like the complementing. I just think the garage on the other sides with the tree removal is an ideal.
Okay.
Thanks, Danielle. Okay, and then I think I have Brenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I similarly, I'm to Daniela. I'm challenged to understand what that indented area is and why that wouldn't be a second garage spot there that would allow you to not have to have the addition on the side and remove the trees, and also to break the sight line of people coming down the street. I believe it's Thomas Street, looking toward the lake. So I don't understand the intent. I would appreciate clarification as to why that's happening, the loss of the trees, and then having an odd configuration there that, again, this is such an important street, and I think that creates an odd visual element. That's it for me. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I think the applicant can speak to this as well, but if I can maybe provide a bit more context. If you look at the site plan on page 246, so you can see the garage to where the existing garage is now, they can't actually fit a car in the driveway without being on the town's property. So the idea with the new garage is it's set back farther so that a car can fit in front of the garage, so a visitor coming to park or whatever can park on the driveway and be fully within the property. And I guess the reason they haven't done that where the existing garages is they don't want to push that for any farther back into the existing landscaping. That may also be a requirement of the Conservation Authority, but I think the applicant could better speak to that, just to provide you just a bit of context on that.
Yes, and we've got Terry in the circuit, so he'll be able to, I'm sure he's taking a note of these questions, and he'll be able to pick that up for you, Brenda, I'm sure. So I've got Jerry. I don't see anybody else yet. Jerry, off you go. Yes, I do. I see now Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with Daniela and Brenda's comments as well. This is a very important, iconic heritage structure in the area, and visually very prominent along a well-traveled strolling path from the Lakeside Park to Dingle Park. And adding to the fact that it's also adjacent to a cozy parkette, the Lakeside Park, nestled between the two properties, halfway along the east-west promenade. And it also culminates in the vista for George Street and George Square from Lakeshore Road. The character and nature of the Lakeside Parkette will be changed from a cozy green vernacular to one of a more rigid stone wall presence with one side, as the proposal is presently shown. And the question would be, is there a plan to green this boundary to maintain the understated pastoral character and also for the benefit of the park users? And also, will the iconic white picket fence remain? I understand the architectural premise for the stone additions. I think actually the massing of the additions are quite nice. They're set back. They do all the right things for a heritage structure, and it is exciting. The linear stone planting wall creating a horizontal line linking the additions on either side, I think that's lovely. Creating a heavy grounding for the house, the old and new being distinguished, all the while accentuating the historic house. These are bold architectural moves. And in theory and concept, they work nicely with a portion of the house. Especially seen on the our elevation page, our page 248. However, when we look at the three-dimensional view, the renderings on page 254, and I understand from Carolyn these aren't the final renderings, but just to give us an idea, it doesn't hold as well. It doesn't hold together as well. Visually, there doesn't appear to be a sympathetic nor balanced relationship between the old and the new. Perhaps this is because the stone, the stone material is heavily texturized, and the appearance of the additions on either side in this elevation and in the 3D rendering appear at odds with the house and not complementary. They appear rather little too brutal and cubic in form and too strong textured, adjacent to the smooth white stucco. And so therefore, visually, I feel the additions tend to overpower the heritage building, especially from the, our 3D views. And it doesn't seem to be a happy marriage, whether a smooth transition from one style to another or a balanced contrast. Well, I think maybe using the heavy stone material at the base of the new additions and a lighter material going up towards the roof may be an attempt, perhaps, but still adopting a visual lighter material. And another question I have is: has there been consideration of an alternate roof type to the flat roof proposed? I know there are visual access points from the windows on the interior. Just a question to see if that has been done. I think we are missing the east elevation in our package. I don't see it. The east and west elevations look the same in my package. I don't know if everyone else has the same issue.
Yes, correct. Sorry, we didn't have the updated drawing, so it is included in the PowerPoint if anyone wants me to link to it.
Okay. And I guess the greening of the west wall of the new garage addition, as well as the lot boundary adjacent to the Lakeside Park, is a concern. So in general, I would say in summary that the massing, I have no issue with the massing. I think the concept is exciting. I think it does well by the heritage house. I think it's a matter of, we have heard about the garage type on the waterfront, on the street front. And basically it's the resolution of the materials and a little bit more refinement that we need to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. It's a bit like the original house. The house itself is like a number of beautiful books. They've been hand-tooled leather covers on them, the beautiful books. And now we're putting on bookends. And we don't want the bookends to dominate the books. In other words, we want them to complement the books. So I think what I'm hearing is the stone is nice, but maybe there's too much of it. Anyway, that's just what I'm maybe hearing. Sue. Where is she?
You're on. Sorry, just had to unmute. I think the biggest problem is probably that second garage on the park side. If there's some way that can be moderated or ameliorated, and that is the suggestions that Jerry pointed out. And I do have trouble understanding what this whole, on the garage on the other side, what this whole covered walkway thing is all about. I just don't sort of understand the concept. I'm assuming it fulfills a need. I'm just not sure what it is. So it's just odd when you look at it and you see a garage door and then you see kind of a cubby and you're thinking, what the heck, right? It just, so that sort of cubby look is a bit confusing. Other than that, there's so many things I love about it. I would love to live in this house. But if there's some way to soften that second garage on the park side where the public is looking, and sort of accessing that side, softening it, whether it be by materials or be by redesign, or whether they're just going to have to nuke that second garage idea completely, I'm not sure. And what's that cubby thing really working? That's it.
Good, thank you, Sue. And then I had Kerry. There you go.
Maybe it's on mute. So kind of echoing, I actually find I'm probably more in agreement with Hugh Drew that, to me, the beautiful house is bookended on both sides, and I personally don't find it complimentary, particularly on the east side where it comes up to just below the windows on a very modern addition. I think it takes away from, I believe, I'm not as big a fan as some of the other speakers on this. I think it really takes away from the house, the way it's drawn. I can see that some stone would be very complimentary, but I don't find this complimentary to the house. As everybody said, this is it's probably the most traveled street in Oakville by people that come down to enjoy Old Oakville. And I think people would be questioning these additions the way they're drawn currently.
Okay, thanks, Gary. All of these comments are being taken into account. So, George?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I put it the right way, but I'm kind of gratified to hear a lot of the comments that are coming forward, because when we put this plan together back in the late 70s and finally got approval in 82, the procedures which are set out in the plan on page 33 set out a number of requirements. And one of them in subsection B is that the proposal has to be sympathetic to the district's character. I can't see that. And further down on the guidelines, compatibility of the alterations as well as the structure with the existing built environment. And quite frankly, there are no stone walls, to my knowledge, that are around there in that block. The plan, as you'll remember, was put together on a section of blocks of units within the district. And this one had to be treated quite sensitively. And I agree that it looks like bookends. The other thing is that the stone, there isn't any kind of massing of stone, to my knowledge, anywhere else in that block, let alone most of the district. It's stucco, it's wood frame. You can see to the west the new washroom that was put there recently is beside the two heritage structures, and the buildings to the north of that, the middle of the previous block. There's no stone, and this seems to me the impact, I think, is too much. It juts out, and I think it ending, I think, is right. It takes away from the house and emphasizes the additions. Those are my initial comments on it. Anyhow, I don't mind the modern portions to the rear, because that's on the lake, so it doesn't take away from the heritage house, the Wilson house. But I like to echo some of the comments the others have made about the garages and the stone. Thank you.
Okay, good, George. Thank you. Was anybody else wanting to give comments at this stage? Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the trees on the west side of the property. Carolyn, could you just take the committee through the process? These don't fall under the private tree bylaw as a result of it being a development application. Could you just take us through that, please?
Sorry, the two trees being removed from for the driveway?
Yes. The ones that are proposed, yes.
Well, it's my understanding from the staff who are processing the site plan application that they are reviewing it as they normally would, and they are using the private tree bylaw to evaluate it. I know that assessment hasn't been completed yet, so I don't know of any final determination on the trees. That's my understanding of it, unless I'm not understanding your question.
No, perfect.
Okay.
Appreciate the clarification.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we've got a representative of the applicant here. That's Terry Martino of Grandwise. Terry, are you ready to join the discussion? Huh?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Well,
can you see me and hear me?
We can see you and we can hear you, and you've heard a lot of the comments, I guess. Let's hear what you want to tell us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and thank you, Carolyn, for an extremely informative presentation of our application. I guess if I could touch on some of the comments that I've heard. As you can imagine, being this close to the lake, our first consultation was with Conservation Authority. They had some serious concerns and actually limited us to more or less the footprint that you see. That is to say, renovating some of the existing additions that were put on, and there was an agreement that there was to be no new net floor area. So we're removing the proposal, the addition in the back. And then there was much discussion with the conservation as to where it would be located. So the owner obviously has a desire for an additional garage, two-car garage. And because of the location of the house so close to Front Street, it is impossible to park out in front of the garage without hanging over the road allowance. And there's been, I agree, much discussion of how well traveled that Front Street is. And so the logical place, for a number of reasons, for the additional garage space was to the west side. For a couple of reasons. One, we were able to set it back very close to the zoning bylaw requirement of 5.7, and that's there for the purpose of parking a garage, or parking a car, in front of the garage, wholly on your property. As well as it's the furthest point from the lake. If we were to look at putting the garage that is on the west side proposed and attach it to the east side garage, we would be closer to them. And the Conservation Authority wasn't particularly happy about that. Furthermore, it would necessitate the removal of 2 trees on the east side as well, mature trees along that frontage. They're private trees as well. So the idea was to put the garage on the west side, and I think there's been comment about bookending, but the whole architectural idea here is to accentuate the 2-story stucco Georgian home. And we sort of see the garage as extensions of stone wall. I think the renderings probably, I take that comment, they're probably rendered too aggressively. But the additions are set back well from the Heritage House. They don't have competing roof slopes. The intention was to keep them minimal, and that's why that idea was chosen. But the bookends are sort of seen as a continuation of the stone wall, which runs along the property on the east side. There are other stone walls as well in the district. And the idea, again, is to accentuate the old white stucco 2-story simple Georgian form. I guess from my notes with respect to a couple of the other comments, I guess the cubby, as it was mentioned, again, rendered perhaps is not best at this point, but it's a covered porch. That's where the entrance garage is. That's where the entrance mudroom is. And so that is simply under the flat roof version of a covered porch for our client. I think that's pretty much our sort of intended idea towards the development of the property. As you can imagine, we were quite constrained, and there's a number of approvals which we're working through. I think, I guess the other thing that I could point out to Carolyn and I met on site, I think probably back in May when we thought COVID was only going to be about a weekly thing or a couple of months. We've since received approval from Conservation Authority. They confirmed it, that they're okay, and have sent that word to the site plan process. Furthermore, the Lakeside Ratepayers Association, we have a letter on file from them thinking that, or at least in approval, thinking that the proposal is sympathetic to the existing historic structure and quite nice for the area. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Terry. Right, questions of Terry? Nope, no further question. Okay, good. Well, you've got good though, Terry, and I think what you're hearing is the idea of the stone, at least what I think I'm hearing, is fine at a lower level, but perhaps having it all the way up to the roof is a little bit heavy, and it sort of overemphasizes the bookends to the detriment of the house itself, which is the treasure. You take that and do whatever you feel you need to do with it, but I'm sure you'll hear that if it comes back the same way to the committee for a heritage approval. Okay, So if there's no further questions of this delegate, I know we have Catherine Hurley. I've got two versions of you, Catherine, on my screen. One is a telephone and the other is a nice fancy H. The telephone, I think that's probably the one that you're on.
Yes, can you hear?
10 minutes, Catherine, so I could just remind you of that. The others kind of know that and live within it, so keep you to a 10 minutes, but we really do want to hear what you have to say to us. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Chair Bucknell. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you and the committee for allowing me this opportunity. It's nice to see some familiar faces. I also want to thank Councillor Giddings and town staff, Carolyn and Kate, for the time that they've given me in the discussion about this development. I'm a neighbor. I live at 24 Thomas Street, which is in one of the 1852 Duncan Chisholm shipbuilders' cottages, lovingly referred to as the Three Sisters. I'm the middle sister. And so I have the privilege every day to look across at this beautiful property at 176 Front Street. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes, we are.
Great. So what's of interest here is that it really is a heritage jewel in the first heritage district of the town. And so whatever is proposed, it's really important that we get it right. And so I'm not going to comment on the built and architectural heritage, the aesthetic of a prairie architecture on a Georgian structure. I'm actually here to save the spruce trees. It's almost an 11th hour stay of execution, or at least I'm feeling it this way, because in the site plan application, there resides the green print arborist report. And as some of the committee members have observed, and the heritage staff, is that there are 3 trees to be removed. But I wanted to speak to the 2 heritage trees that are at the front of property. They're identified by the arborist on page 8 of the green print report as tree number 14 and tree number 15. But I'd like to refer to them as in their botanical names, which is the Picea glauca and the Picea abies, which is the white spruce and the Norway spruce. They are northern temperate boreal forest trees. And the reason that I'm coming to this committee is to hope we can look at this as an integrated approach to heritage that gives both equal weight to built and architectural as well as natural. Almost more of a UNESCO approach to heritage conservation. And so when trees 14 and 15 are just cited as being removed to accommodate a garage, I think it's really important to look at the history of these trees. They are century trees. They're at least several hundred years old. They predate the 1837 structure of the house. Probably were here when William Chisholm hopefully purchased the land from the Mississaugas. And all aspects of the spruce tree were used by the indigenous peoples, both for medicinal purposes as well as the construction of bows and utensils. So those trees have stood as sentinels to the park. They've been elegant, gracious, welcoming landmarks. and they soften the house. I mean, you can't really look at that property without looking at the wonderful built heritage without this lovely natural heritage element. The arborist report on page 3 talks about that their structure is fair, it's good. When I looked at the Ministry of the Environment website about the Picea glauca, that tree grows 2 to 4 inches a year. And so when you look at the size of what the diameter at breast height, which is one of the measures in the arborist report, you can see that these trees have been around for a while. And I think it really behooves us, you know, when we're in the midst of a official plan review that's integrating the importance of the effects of climate change, environmental stewardship, and the important role that trees play in the environmental quality of our community, to just arbitrarily suggest the removal. Now, I completely understand the constraints that the architect and the owners are under because of the Conservation Authority restrictions. And I just want to say that I'm hoping that we may come up with a creative solution where 2 cars have always been parked on the east side of the property. And so I'm really hoping that maybe some creative application of design can continue to have the parking on that side and leave the trees alone. So I'm here to save the spruce, and they have a heritage story to tell that predates a contact, and I think have equal, if not maybe more significant, especially in these days. So I hope that we can arrive. I haven't as yet met Mark and Petra Arenas, the new owners. I look forward to getting to know them as neighbors, and but I'm really hoping that we can save these beautiful trees, go back to just keeping the parking activity on the east. I liked what I was hearing from some of the committee members in terms of the about the west side development, and I really felt that I couldn't be living here and know that this meeting was taking place and know that I didn't say something on behalf of the natural heritage of the site. So, Mr. Chair, that's the end of my comments. I hope I'm under the 10 minutes.
Catherine,
I thank you very much for your time.
you were just over 8 minutes, so I mean, that's really good. And I think everybody appreciates it when somebody from the community who has an interest takes the time. And it's not as easy as sort of going up to town hall and parking and drifting into a committee. You had to get over the technological hurdles, which we all have. So you really did well, Catherine. Does anyone have any questions directed for Catherine? She made her points very clear. Catherine, there aren't any questions of you, but we really thank you for your input, and you can be assured that it will be taken into account as this application progresses. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Bucknell, and to all the members of the committee and councillors. I wish you well with this. It really is an important property, and I know from what I've been hearing today, it's in good hands with this committee. So thank you.
Super. Thank you, Catherine. I think everybody who wanted to say something should opportunity to do so, and I'm sure that Carolyn has been busily, well, she'll be able to play it all back, but has been taking notes. So the end of it for us at this point is simply to have a motion that it receives it. I think that's all we're doing. Yeah, that the report that we got today be received. So we're not making any other comments. All discussion, Councillor Gittings, are you giving me that motion?
I would be happy to do so, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we have a motion to receive the report. Any further discussion on that motion? Opposed? Seeing none, I declare that motion carried, and we'll move on to the next item of business, which is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
One of these. Yeah, thanks, Terry. Sorry.
Thank you, members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Gaylord Gardens, and that's a nice thing because this is kind of finishing up a process that began a long time ago, and I think this one is Sue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It is a pleasure actually to finish our last report to you of this year on a good note. And so I am here to take you through the conservation plan for the cultural heritage landscape of Gaylord Gardens, one of Oakville's treasures. The property itself, I'm sure we're all very familiar with, having seen a few reports on recently, and I hope, of course, everyone has taken the opportunity to visit the property, especially recently. The shoreline works that we looked at, it was either earlier this year or late last year, have been completed, and I think they actually look very nice, and they've repaired a lot of the terrible damage that was done by those flood waters over the past couple of years. And so these presentations do take a little bit of a template because there are requirements that we have to go through to talk about our planning policy and framework. But I hope everyone has taken the chance to actually look at the conservation plan itself, because these are incredibly time-consuming and unique documents. I think everyone knows that Elaine Eigel, our researcher, is the one who primarily puts all of these plans together and spends a tremendous amount of time not just on the policies, but also on the communication aspect as well, working with stakeholders, getting feedback, chasing down feedback from different town departments that are impacted by this. And so despite the kind of template presentation that you see today, the conservation plan itself is a very unique and interesting document, and we hope it will be very useful in the future. The document, of course, follows the planning framework that's been set out by the Livable Oakville Plan and the town's cultural heritage landscape strategy, which we've been working on for several years now, and you've heard quite a bit about. In 2017, Council passed the bylaw 2018, in 2017 we adopted the official plan amendments, but in 2018, bylaw 2018-019 was approved, and that set out the actual requirement for us to have a conservation plan in place for every cultural heritage landscape that we designate under the Ontario Heritage Act. And so specific to Gaylord Gardens, I'm sorry about the Oakville Harbor there. You noticed my wording about templates. We did look at the Phase 2 report in April 15th of 2019, and that's when the area, which already was protected by an older heritage designation bylaw, but that's when it was officially recognized as a significant cultural heritage landscape and moved into Phase 3, which is the implementation of protection measures, which takes several components. And one is that notice of intention to designate, which we issued earlier this year. It was postponed a little bit due to the COVID-19 pandemic, given that the provisions of the Ontario Heritage Act, those timelines were put on hold. And so the last day for objection was November 23rd, and I can confirm that we have not received any objections. And that bylaw will be proceeding to Council in January of 2021. And so the document before you today has gone through numerous layers of review, both with Elaine and Carolyn and myself, but also with town staff in the the Oakville Museum and the Oakville Galleries, facilities and construction management, parks and open space, the region, and also our Indigenous partners, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and Six Nations, who have been incredibly helpful in providing us with information throughout these processes. And so the conservation plan itself does follow the same general template that our others do, meaning that we've got these category A, B, and C type of alterations and changes. Category A actions are things that are considered exempt from town heritage review, and so that makes the day-to-day operations and maintenance of the property easy for the property owners and tenants, so that being the town of Oakville and the Oakville Galleries currently, to do their day-to-day operations. But however, any alterations that impact the heritage attributes will then require heritage permit approval either through Category B, which is our minor process, or Category C, which is the process that brings large-scale changes through to the Heritage Oakville Committee for review and then to Council for final approval. So we are looking for any feedback that you might have on the draft conservation plan. Any changes or comments that you might make will be made immediately so that we can then bring forward the final draft to Planning and Development Council in January 2021. If you're satisfied with the conservation plan as it is, or if you've got minor changes, we would recommend that you endorse and recommend the conservation plan to Planning and Development Council for approval. And so the staff recommendation before you today is that the draft Cultural Heritage Landscape Conservation Plan for Gairloch Gardens be endorsed. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, Sue, thank you. And once again, you and Elaine have done a super job at producing such a well-organized document. It's really good to see that there's been input, obviously, from the town staff who are going to have to maintain this property, and that everybody is quite happy that it won't impact normal day-to-day operations, but will give us the assurance that major changes won't suddenly be made without our oversight. So that's good to see. Excellent report as usual. So any questions or any other feedback to Sue, other than I'm sure everybody agrees with what I've just said? Okay, so if there's no further discussion, if I can have a motion, okay, Councillor Gittings, which would be that we endorse the recommendation. Is there any discussion on that motion? Are there any opposed to it? Seeing none, I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much indeed, Sue.
Thank you.
Don't have any information items in front of me, so that item we can move on from. The date and time of our next meeting is the 19th of January 2021. And I am told on reliable authority that 2021 is going to be a better year than 2020 was. Hang on to that thought, folks. We're not, unfortunately, going to be able to have our annual Pine a Pint.
It's 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, my computer is telling me, so we've done well in timing. And it's a shame that we're not all moving down to the Queen's Head today to have our Christmas lunch, because I think we all enjoy that. And often when we go there, we remember Harry, who started that tradition for us and has always been a guiding light, I think, in everything that we do as we do our work on the committee. So I'd like to thank you all, and I would like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I'll call for a motion to adjourn the meeting, and I'll get that. We're getting that from Mark, or is Mark? I don't know if you can make a motion, Mark. I think George wants to make the motion to adjourn the meeting, and that motion is carried. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been a gas. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Holidays. Holidays.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Yes. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to all. Yeah.